Yeah, there's a lot to sort of. You're right. I have frameworks, and that's probably the OG algorithm. Like algorithms are not solely for computers. I mean, an algorithm is a recipe for a souffle or anything else. These are the steps.
Well, one of the things that I learned in sort of the 15 years I've been in sort of CRM and associated sort of technologies, after selling CRM, I sold professional service automation, which is effectively for services companies a CRM process, because services businesses have a different problem than a product business has, even an intangible product business like a software company. Services companies have the issue of I've got to hire people, or I'm going to have even if I've got resources that are on retainer or on contract, right, and I'm using them to spend. If I've got you in my book and you're sitting there doing nothing, then typically you're a cost to the business, and that's a problem. But I also I've got someone on the bench, is the term I use. But I also have the other problem, the other side, which is if I sell more projects than I have capacity for, I do two things. I disappoint my customer, which is awful. And then even worse, I burn my people because, if someone can do 60 hours in a week, they can maybe do 60 hours for a month. What they can't do is typically 60 hours year in, year out, forever. Maybe you've got, someone will go, I do it all the time. There are individuals who choose to do that. If you're building an organization and a business, that's the expectation breaks, right? So you can't run over percentage for a long period of time either. So they've got this other problem, which is similar to what you're kind of talking about, which is how do I kind of balance the scales? As I grow, I've got the right number of people, but I haven't got them sitting on the bench too long, because they're on the bench too long, it costs me money. So behind this is a skill that I've learned to spend a lot of time thinking about. And good salespeople, I think, no matter what CRM they're using, Salesforce, HubSpot, a piece of paper, a Google sheet, doesn't matter. They put a plan on a page, and they put a plan, and the plan on the page might be kind of what you're describing, a singular plan for a singular contact.
You got to prepare your customer for what's about to happen, and there's an opportunity in there. We certainly look at that. There's a lot of fear. But when you're investing, there's fear too, and there's risk is constantly on the table. And I don't come from an investment background, but I'm not a financier. I don't have a banking background, but I know that I can put a dollar value against actual value. And if you can increase it and you can put moats around it, and there's things you can do to reduce anything happening or diminishing value, then you make money. And again, it's almost like forcing myself to be financially dyslexic, forcing myself to be naive and the idiot in the room has led me to making much better decisions instead of getting too technical.
Welcome to GrowthPulse, the B2B sales podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of business-to-business sales and how businesses can get the most out of their investment in salespeople, sales systems and processes, the lifeblood of any thriving organization. Join us as we explore a range of topics, as well as speak to some of the industry's thought leaders, vendors, success stories, and people who have just won and failed on their journey in business and sales. Before we get started, please do us a huge favor and click subscribe, follow or like wherever you're watching or listening to us. Also, please drop us a comment that you subscribed. We love to get to know our audience. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Growth Pulse, the B2B sales podcast. I'm Dan Bartels, one of your co-hosts. I'm joined as usual by Simon Peterson, my fellow host. Simon, how you going, buddy?
Very well, thanks, mate. Good morning. Happy Monday.
Absolutely. Happy Monday. We're recording this on a Monday morning, trying to, get the week kicked off well. Look, we're joined today by one of our long-term friends, an absolute sales beast, Adam Cordner. Adam, look, welcome to the show, mate.
I'm so stoked to be here for the Monday. I always say, you got to start the Mondays, hard. And I don't think this is going to be hard, but you just got to start them well, like warming up a car.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I do love about these chats, whenever we do them, whether it's a Monday or Friday, whenever we go, is like the thoughts it generates, the way it gets us, like even Simon and I, to think about the things we've got to be adding back into our businesses, right? So, look, Adam, we've known you for a long time, Simon longer than I have. We've all worked together at different stages, but you've done some really interesting things in your career. I mean, you've worked in big tech, you've run small companies, you've opened a coffee pod business, which was an absolute left turn. Look, mate, for the benefit of the our listeners, look, give them the 10-cent tour of your background and kind of your journey in sales.
Oh, look, it's the condensed version is I don't think I've changed. It's I just participate in different sports. I think that's the best way to think. I've had the same methodologies, same successes, and same fears across all the different disciplines. So like a decathlete, it's same person. What I do right now, I've got a company called Cold Start. We began as a services business for e-commerce companies. So we learned a shitload of lessons from the pod company. Like we made every mistake. Some hilarious. We can go into those. Some catastrophic, some incredible. But we documented the whole lot with my business partner Yanni. And with the lessons, we started selling the lessons. Basically, we were able to guide other e-commerce businesses get out of the same pitfalls, like an Instagram photograph is a waste of time. You should be focusing on profit and loss and all these other things. And then from there, we have become an investment bank. So we've been able to see companies that we like and think are only going to be on the right trajectory and take a position, take an equity position or take a fund position in those. And then we're branching into venture capital now. So it looks small on the surface, and that's the whole point. We call it Cold Start because we've got this injection of energy, strategy, operations, and finance that we can get these guys going, from a standing start. And so we do all these things to get them going, and then we look to exit once it gets. We say once we get to a certain critical mass or a hurdle rate, but when we're bored, the second we're bored, we're like, all right, see ya, and that's been it. And previous to that, yeah, lockdown swung around. I had stepped away from my time as a solution consultant at Domo, and I was, looking for the next thing. And I will never be one of these people that say I always wanted to run my own business. I didn't. I kind of just wanted to have a lot of fun, keep skateboarding, keep playing ice hockey, and figure out a way to fund it all. But then I had a daughter, and so I've got certain levels of responsibility now. And through the cafe, it's a coffee story, I met probably the best businessman I've ever met. He just knows how to run a business. And at that time it was a cafe, but he ran it like a corporation. It was incredible. He was like a COO and CEO. It was incredible. And tough times, lockdown swings around, and he's going to be decimated. Inner city cafe, just heavy-handed lockdowns, and look, let's not. I mean, we could make this thing go viral by giving our opinions on lockdown and COVID and so on, but let's not. And he's like, mate, how am I going to sell coffee in a lockdown? Like, what am I going to do? And then he came to me with the idea for it, and I kind of went, my software brain and my fun brain worked together and went, all right, well, why don't we just sell coffee online like a subscription? And it seems to be the gap in the market with pod coffee is good fucking coffee. Yeah. So why don't we put actual good coffee in the pod? And lo and behold, people like good coffee. And it sort of took off from there. And then one step back from that, with all the biggies, solution consultant and an account manager. You guys know me better than most that would sit on a podcast. Hell of a lot of energy, hell of a lot of fun, whether it was, in front of clients or, at sales kickoffs. I think I was wreaking havoc from the dance floor to the Zoom calls.
You were, mate. And look, I remember when I first met you, mate. I think that was back in our inside sales days at SAP. I think, hadn't we just pulled you away from a career in as a makeup artist or something along those lines into the, the world
Yeah.
of cold calling?
I wanted to get the special effects.
Yep.
I wanted to get the special effects, and so just because I'm a huge Star Wars fan and loved it, and so anyway, there's no short story. So I'd wrapped up an ice hockey career, figured out that being Australian and small probably wasn't going to transcend to North America for too long. So I came back to Australia and then started understudying a couple of special effects guys at Fox Studios.
Yep.
Got right into it. And this is right before, so this is my first experience in a tech revolution or something new in a market that was disruptive.
Yep.
And we were doing monster masks and special effects,
Yep.
But physical ones.
Yep.
So, like sculpting latex and airbrushing faces and so on. And that was great for about a year before CGI came in after Star Wars and crushed it. That was it. I mean, only now that it's come back. And so the only work that I was getting, I started getting tapped on the shoulder for catwalks and like magazines and stuff. And I'd never done anything like that. But I think because of my training I had no interest in beauty. I had no interest in makeup, but I knew aesthetically what to do. And I knew, and I find out later on, one of the reasons why, but I knew that I had a skill in conveying a message, whether it's visually or might be verbally or in a presentation. And that translated really well. But I hated it. I hated the industry. I just felt so out of place, and it's full of wankers, and it just wasn't really me.
Yep.
And then I started a small business with a couple of mates doing sports cars but a timeshare. Again, one of the first ones. So the first disruption was tech, CGI. The second disruption was we'd started a business that relied heavily on businesses having a huge expense account. Yep. And then the GFC hit. and I was spat out of that. But the thing that remained was I'd built a shared calendar using Dreamweaver and a relational couple of relational Excel files at the time to make a shared calendar, and that's the thing that stood. And I started shopping that around, and the long story short, I ended up through a back door at Microsoft. And then after that, that's how I met Peterson. And I think Peterson and I I remember loosely the interview just thinking, well, I don't know what you're going to do here. I've got this, but I don't know what, but I think it's going to be fun. And it was pivotal because what came out of that was I don't think I was wired for sales in what was then a traditional sense. It's certainly changed and it fits me now. But what came out of that was Simon and the team identified that I had a way of communicating. I had a way of presenting. I was contrarian in my business approach, probably contrarian to that. I used to sit there. I mean, I remember one day someone asked me if my parents worked there because I looked like I might have just dropped in for work experience, or that I was the IT guy. But everyone at SAP knew that Fred was the IT guy, and Fred and I looked like we might have actually grown up in the same neighborhood. But that was probably a pivotal moment after working with Simon and seeing the team from there and sort of taking control of what I think was the next evolution in software sales. Because there was spin, and spin was spin. But the value engineering and the solution selling, I think, took the forefront. And then Simon moved on, and it was boring, and I was getting performance reviewed for not wearing suits and whatever else. I got busted skateboarding in the car park, and they wouldn't let me back in the building. The security guy wouldn't let me back in the building, and I was pleading with him, telling him, I can't work here, man. It's just my lunch break. Like, I'm just having because there was a really good service ramp in in the back, underneath. You know, the car park underneath.
I know it
And
well.
then that's when Exact Target sort of came knocking, and I transitioned fully then into pre-sales. And again, you know, I think that culturally was about the right time. I think when it wasn't about corporate force, but it was about the customer, and I think that's what sort of changed from there. But yeah, started in makeup, and now, I mean, I could go back into it. There's a couple of investments we're looking at. We'll see.
I think the thing I just heard out of your story then, mate, is and you say, you know, you didn't think of yourself as a salesperson when you were in makeup, but like the themes that jump out of that for me is you've always had this ability to look creatively at a problem, and all the way back from makeup. How do you turn someone who's as ugly as me into you know, monster makeup and think about that transformation and that change? And you know, I know you and I have worked together as I'm a salesperson, and you're the creative person being a solution engineer, and the ability to look at a problem and say, hey, how can I use our tool sets and really focus on the outcome that customer wants and make change? And I think that's the core of any, not just great entrepreneur, but any good salesperson, is like, how do you focus on, you know, the real outcome that someone wants, not what you're trying to sell them. You know, talking about your pod business, it's okay. You know, the market changed for everybody, you know, on a dime, but at the end of the day, there's a problem that customers have, which is they want good coffee. Okay, well, we sell good coffee. We've got great relationships with, you know, great roasters and all this type of stuff. Okay, well, now our delivery is going to have to change. What's that look like? How do I build a system and a process to make that work? I mean, that was one of the things that always struck me when we worked together, was you always had really good structures around how you wanted to think about a problem. And maybe some of that goes almost back to your make, like your sort of other things you've done, which is, I know I've got to build the layers up. I can't just start at the end and work out what I've actually got to go through the steps and the processes. So, you know, I want to sort of pivot to the work you're doing now, and obviously out of the pod business, I know you've kind of launched some software products, but in that, like, how have you thought about the sales process? You know, a lot of our listeners, you know, they're salespeople, they're out there day to day, you know, treading the boards, treading the pavements, etc. In that core sales process, how do you think about, you know, growing, you know, an organization when you've built it from scratch? Because as AEs, we own our territory, we own our businesses, right? How do you think about that process of that core sales piece?
Yeah, there's a lot to sort of. You're right. I have frameworks, and you know, that's probably the OG algorithm. Like, algorithms are not solely for computers. I mean, an algorithm is a recipe for a souffle or anything else. It's just, these are the steps. And AI, funnily enough, is just that algorithm being run 1 million times per second to figure out all the possible variations and so on.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, as I run a series of algorithms, and that they're just things that work, and it kind of, you know, if you run the rat through the maze enough, it just figures it out and knows the direction to go, the path of least resistance. And so I think it's important to be lazy, and like, be lazy in your sales is try and get to the point. So empathy is the first one. Just remove yourself completely from quota, and, you know, you got to follow up with your sales manager, and what can I sandbag going into next month, and, you know, CRM vanity metrics, like what can I do to look good until my hope strategy plays out, and move to just chat to a business. And I use the acronym CVS to BVS, and I'm sure I'm stolen it, but that's current view of the situation to the better view of the situation. And I think that they think, just asking that, it's like, all right, so currently what? So what's a better view? So tell me the better view. And instead of thinking immediately about the sale, you empathize and you sit with them at the better view and go, okay, so it would look like this, and you would have this much revenue potentially, and you'd have these other challenges too. Okay, what would it feel like to be in that position, and what do I have to do? And then you just work backwards. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, so really what we're doing here is we're looking at margin. And so in order to improve margin, we need to sell the product. We need to price the product at a way that is profitable, not always easy. And then we need to land the product at a lower rate to help on margin, because pricing is not always about going over. It's looking at raw materials or efficiencies to try and get the gap from there, and then go, right, in order to do that, we do this, and go, okay, so here's the solution. We've got a system that will allow you to bulk order product or take advantage of, say, shipping, or we could get more efficient with the materials, and we're going to improve, margin there. Also, with what we do on the front end, being improvements to your landing page, improvements to your advertising, and so on, will increase the volume and which will align with the pricing. And here's the plan for that. And then it before you know it, you're executing on the plan. And so I don't think it was ever so much like recently, the last at least 3 to 5 years, it's not been a sale as much as it's been an agreement for growth. Hence why investing makes sense. When you see a good business and go, if you just execute this plan, you're going to grow. Would you consider investment? And so on. And I think that's the value approach. And then you have to go back to your office and go, all right, we need some contracts. We need to demonstrate it. We need to, put together a business plan that the board can review and sign it all off, and do all the sales stuff. But for me, the sales mechanics or the sales process is the admin of the deal. The selling is being empathetic and letting you guys together, you don't buy a slab of cement, you buy the house that you want. And if you go in selling a slab of cement, you can never visualize. So you might be the best slab of cement, but if you're not helping them visualize what the house is going to look like at the end, then you're just going to be in a war with it. Whereas if you're able to align with the architects and go, okay, this is the ultimate vision for it, I can certainly feel what it's going to be like to be in this house. In the current economic market, we feel that it might be worth, you guys are still in Sydney, so like $50 million or whatever it is. You can get a house here for a Sydney coffee. But if you look at it that way, then you go, right, I know what value is, and I know the delta between value and our cost. And if the value of it is greater than the cost of the solution, and you understand margin, then that's how I've been selling it. And look, I do it for $49 a month. Customers, it's the same thing. Like where do you see yourself? Like, why are we actually doing this? To $250,000, $350,000 deals, it's the same thing.
Yep.
It's just about empathizing and then drawing a map back. So CVS to BVS is something that I constantly go as a format.
Yeah, I love it. It's interesting. I think you certainly nailed the one of the core things I bang on about all the time, and that's empathy. Putting yourself in the shoes of the person that's got to make the decision, got to solve the problem, wants to see life better tomorrow than it is today, etc. And I think we keep. I mentioned this many times on the podcast. It's got to be about empathy. It's got to be about putting yourself in the shoes of the person that's got to solve the problem. It's simple psychology.
And what helps with empathy is, you can always. Like I was thinking about this with my daughter, watching her on a scooter. She's flying around on it. I've had a reputation for maybe taking like a wheelie chair down through the middle of North Sydney too fast once. Certainly no fear. But her experience is that she hasn't stacked it hard enough to really form any kind of reservation yet. And, you do it as a parent, but, she's a bit smaller in her stature like me. I imagine she's got a better center of gravity, but she hasn't stacked it yet. And so the way my sales brigmanship now is improved because I've been a business owner. And it's incredible what like I was saying early on in our sort of, as we're testing out the mics, in a bigger company, you tend to believe you become cultured. I think it's almost like every company has an accent. I know when someone's come from one of the biggies because they've got an accent, and you can sort of go, right, you've come from there because that's how you behave. And so you forget your customers don't speak your language and so on. So
nor do they want to.
That's it. Like,
Yeah.
it was incredible to me after running a bit company, and now continuously, like as it evolves into a significant capital beast, is what I give a shit about is so misaligned with what so many software reps come to me with. It's so misaligned. Like, one thing that really mattered to me at a certain point in time was how fast I could pack a box, because I was packing, like, we had one promotion we screwed up massively, where we forgot to put a limit on how many people could order free coffee, and so everyone did. and so we were packing boxes, man. It was like printing, like the printer ran out of. I didn't think a printer could, the heat printers, but we'd burn it out. We're packing boxes. My hands were fucked because of everything was cutting on it or whatever. I needed to ship product, and I had a software rep bang on about getting lower rates. And I went, "You're missing the point, man.
Yeah.
I'll pay more if you get your ass down to the warehouse with me and learn how to use the tape gun." And so, get this, my solution came from, I kid you not, came from a solution consultant who recommended a faster tape gun. And that was like, that was worth more to me than signing up to a new shipping service and so on. So, whether if you've got the cojones to go and start your own business, or a side hustle for nothing more than some type of MBA, like, if you want to get an MBA, run a fucking business. Don't bother with the MBA, because you will learn very quickly what you've got to do to achieve cash flow. You'll understand the emotion of not being paid on an invoice.
I've said this so many times, right? And then, I ran my own company before I joined Salesforce, and I did an MBA before that as well, and I learned more in owning my own company than I ever learned working or doing an MBA. When you've got the pressure of making payroll on a Friday, you work this stuff out. You work it out real fast in terms of, like, okay, literally, how can I ensure I've got enough cash? I'm earning enough money from each of my transactions. I work out what my costs are. If I'm looking at understanding the margin on a deal, you find the right suppliers, you pull the products that don't work. We were doing field service. You stop servicing areas that don't make any money. You say no to customers. And we say no. Like, that's one of the key ones that I think people in sales as an employee forget about. It's really okay to say no.
I double down on that and say no is the most critical word in business.
Yeah.
Both sides. Like, transparently, I had a reputation in some companies for killing deals.
Yep.
And it's true, because I've got a reputation professionally. The unprofessional one's different, but, like, the professional reputation is some of my customers. I've got a customer who was a customer of mine at Microsoft, SAP, Salesforce, and Domo.
Yep.
Same guy. And then even became a customer of Spotify.
Yep.
Because it was I backed him out of a deal before and said, look, I think this is wrong. Yep. I think it's great for a sales number, but I think it's wrong. And I struggled with that at some of the bigger branded sort of companies, where I would go in and I would be uncertain, go, you could spend the money on this, but I think your target's off. I think you're going to waste money. So instead of trying to improve marketing, you spend the money on the product, because a good product is going to help immeasurably compared to trying to get your marketing down. So I prefer you to get your product right and then talk to us. And that would kill a deal, but it wouldn't kill a company. And I think that's the important thing. Like, I don't want to be of a reputation for recommending the wrong thing and backing it out.
And like, I think, people it's an interesting experience where, and as a salesperson, and you were a solution consultant for a period, and obviously you've gone on. When you're running a company, mate, you're the number one salesperson. That's the deal. So, kind of the experience that people go through is, are we trying to close a deal that is not natural to close? And sometimes there's a component of getting a customer on. This is the problem that solves this. And yes, we've got some issues, which is you need a faster tape gun, 100%. But once you solve the tape gun problem, you've got to get the boxes out of the warehouse, and you now need to be able to tell AusPost or your shipping company fast enough to get the trucks there. So even if I solve the tape gun problem for you, all that's doing is pushing the problem like one step down the chain. It's a tape gun and it's software and it's a bunch of things to solve it, right? And it doesn't matter what you're selling, whether you're selling transport, or it doesn't matter. Sometimes you've got to push a customer to think of the whole problem. And you've got to be able to challenge them and think around kind of that bigger piece, which is look at the whole issue that is in front of you. This is kind of what you guys are doing now from a capital perspective, right? This is where your company can go. This is with the right tools, the right assets, the right resources, kind of what happens next. And I think that's a really crucial part of, if you are genuinely focused on their outcome, you're giving them good advice saying, hey, listen, you need to buy my software, but there's no point buying my transport logistics software until I solve the tape gun problem. I want to win that deal, but I also don't want to have you as a smelly customer. And I think, whether you're working for any organization, software or otherwise, whether you're owning your own company, when you genuinely put a customer in the center of the conversation, and you look at their business, then you can start to do some things. And this is where I think it's interesting, all the different methodologies, right? You have Challenger and others. And I always thought you were a bit of a challenge, like just in the way you operated, right? A bit of a Challenger salesperson. But it isn't. Challenge is actually the wrong word for it. It's about you thinking holistically about a problem and genuinely showing a customer there are multiple ways to get there. And in business, there's no guarantees. And sometimes you need to take big swings. So the big swings that you need to go and take look like this. Take them, don't take them. Hey,
it's interesting. It's my advice to anyone, maybe like midway through or just getting their groove on with like account management.
Yep. Is
you should be selling like an investor.
Yes.
Because I found out I was dyslexic in my very early 30s, and it explains so much because I was forced then to always think laterally and creatively to solve the problem. And, sometimes it was easier for me to convey a very simple message than try and wade through, huge documents and so on. But think of it like this. We always talk about ROI, right? And it's literally return. So define return. We just say, well, the ROI. It's like, well, hang on, where are you hanging your ROI? Because ROI for me might be earnings per share. ROI, the R for me
could be more time.
Just the R. Like, don't forget the R, and then don't forget the investment. So and I'm going to say how I sell for the last time, and I'll go into why I don't say it so much, is I approach every opportunity as an investment going in. What I'm trying to do here is, so the way we invest is this. It's part financial capital and it's part sweat equity. And it's a legal way to boost a stock or enhance a company. It's the legal way. And the way that we do it is you look at the company and go, okay, I've identified your strengths and I've seen the weaknesses. I'm calling them out as deficiencies. So your deficiencies fit squarely with what we've got as sales and marketing resources. So we're willing to give you the resources. And what does that do? It increases the value of the business and it increases the value on our investment. If we can quite literally increase the value of the business by putting sweat equity in, then it grows and then I win and we all win. Software should be the same. And I think that gets a little bit lost and you're looking at features, but if you were to invest in that company and then go, right, I'm going to invest for two reasons. One is if I put this software in, it will increase the value across whatever line of business. Therefore, if I was a shareholder, is this solution the right solution?
Yep.
Versus you've got a marketing director and we are a product for marketing and it's great for them and so on. But then the moment you think about it going, okay, my solution is this and it's an investment and we should be getting the return altogether, then the question isn't about, well, how much does it cost? It's how much can I get?
Yep.
And it's rare that the one thing that we get asked from an investment perspective is we get asked for a load of capital and sweat equity, and then we negotiate the equity. So they want as much of us as they possibly can get, as much capital and as much of us as they can possibly get, because our premise is value, and we can empathize with the business and where that company could potentially grow to. I don't see that a lot in software sales of people going, we want to invest. And the best way for us to invest is to put the software in, and we'll come along in the journey. And then whether or not you can negotiate it or whether or not you've got that free cash flow, invest.
Yeah.
Take a position, and maybe that investment is offering a concession so that you can get a longer relationship in the software. So, and then the other thing that reminds me as I'm going through that is the biggest lesson I learned was from Yanni, my business partner in coffee, who's now he's one of, if not the best digital marketer and CMO I've ever seen, who does not come from a traditional background because he actually understands customers at a very low level, was the concept of helping people buy instead of selling. And that revolutionized the way I thought. And when
what does he mean by that?
Well, I started with, I described how I would do a transaction. And he's like, it's like the cafe. And so depending on how you get the lead, if a lead comes to you, they want a solution. No one wastes their time in a business day trying to get into a sales cycle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You're just not going to do it. So give them some respect and back off a bit, like going into a shop. And and this goes down to the hospitality over customer service methodology that we have. Yanni is a student of what's called the hospitalian, in that customer service and sales should be a feeling. It should be an emotion and a feeling, not a process. And when it's done right, people pay premiums. And when it's done right, people transact and so on. So moving from selling to them to help them buy is the most transformative part of our entire sales engagement, because all we do is help people buy. We learned that with coffee. There's nothing we could do but make it very easy to buy. We explained what it was. We took them through the process, and then we just made it easy to buy. The same thing with the services that we did for the software companies that we're involved with and so on is we just make it easy. And that's by structuring the services and giving a bit to get and so on. We're there to help you buy. And I often think about, probably more going to get a suit, or, you walk in, you help. You don't walk into a suit store because you got nothing else to do. I mean, I'm not obviously a huge suit wearer, but if I'm there because I need a suit.
100%.
So help me. Take the measurements. Ask me what it's for and so on. Would you like some water? Okay. Extra pants. I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy.
Yes.
And I think that mental shift from, can I help you buy this? And can I do it in a way where I feel as if I'm investing in the growth of the business? Those two components completely flip the traditional, what I think is account management and selling, of trying to, take you through the features and functions and, trying to game it along and trying to discount the bejesus out of it to get your transaction.
I think there's two ways to think about that problem, right? So there is absolutely a use case for people who are in a market to do things, right? I've walked into a suit store, I've rung a software company, I've come to your website, or however I've got there, right? But I think that there's also another side of that equation, which is people don't know this is a solution to a problem sometimes until they see, hey, did you know this is a problem? And did you know there's a way to solve that? Otherwise, I keep persevering, back to your example before, with the shit tape gun, and I just can't scale. I can't get through this problem. So I think like there are two pieces, but there is one reality that is universal. You cannot force anybody to do something they don't already want to do. It just doesn't work, right? I mean, all of those who have got partners or friends, you can't force your mate to come to the pub if he doesn't want to go. You can't do it, right?
That's it.
He's just not going to turn up. I'm married and I've given up trying to force my wife to do anything. Just doesn't want to go on holidays. We're not going. Like doesn't want to go to dinner tonight. We're not having dinner. Like that's just, and that's okay. And I think in sales, you've got to have that same understanding, which is, yeah, we can fill both buckets. Customers we're in a market, but even then, they may not be in the market that you're in, and you might not solve their problem. So be willing to say no and exit those conversations early. But you can also, and sometimes I think you can find the biggest value buckets for those where you say, hey, listen, I've done a whole bunch of research and we've got a bunch of customers that are just like you, or we're building a solution to fill this problem. I want to talk to you about it. You're a business that should have capital, should have some other people that bring some extra skills. Can we talk to you about that? And some of those are your best deals. But the thing that you can never force them to do, and I think salespeople get caught on these. And as a sales leader, I've seen this, I don't know how many times. As a sales, when you get hammered by those stinky deals that are in your pipeline, you've held on for too long, and you're concerned about getting them out and moving on, and this customer has no interest in this whatsoever. Again, using your tape gun experience, you're trying to sell the bloke new racking, and he's like, dude, 100%, I need racking, except it is so far down my list of stuff to fix. That's a 2-year away problem. I can deal with that problem like this. It's easier and cheaper for me to go and talk to the, rent a space bloke up the road and shift some pallets around. Yep, it's going to be twice as expensive. However, in cash, the time and effort of shutting the warehouse down and putting new rack, I just can't do it. And we do need to do it, and we will get there, but it's not today. Great, it's dead. Come back, schedule the conversation. Come back in 18 months' time. Hey, mate, we talked about it. There's a new way. We've got a new methodology of not shutting your warehouse down and putting new racking in, and off we go. And, mate, couldn't have called it at a better time. But I think people really struggle with like that conversation of saying, hey, listen, that one's not going to happen. And then the worst fault that I see that salespeople get into is they think that deal cycle went for 3 years. No, it didn't. That deal got lost, closed lost. It's okay. It's good. Close it, and then reopen it. It's got, when you can't assume that any customer you're talking to remembers anything you said to them 2 years ago. The people might have changed. They're not thinking about your product. They don't. I mean, they know you. They remember you. Hey, thanks for coming in, Adam. But they don't remember the conversation, and nor should they. So you start from scratch again. Sometimes you start further back from scratch because, hey, why did we not buy this last time? Well, there must be a reason we didn't buy this. So you've got to go further back than last time. And like that's a real challenge I see salespeople and organizations struggle with. It's like, okay, get to the end. I know.
This is a capital business which we have to fill a pipeline. Because a lot of the I mean, it's predominantly a services business. So we charge for a service. And that service costs me because there's either contractors and people that go into that business. And if we make an investment, that investment won't. I mean, it's not Bitcoin where you're going to lose all your money quickly or make money quickly and then lose it again. It's 4 years, 5 years down the track that we might realize a gain. So it's spread. So the way in which we manage it is in the calendar, because if the calendar's full and that's it, like just go out there and help people understand what they need to do in their business, and then our hit rate is low, because I'd rather sit there and they'll go, what we really need is we need investment for capital machinery because we need to dig, more coal out of the ground or whatever else it is, and then we can go, hey, this has been such an eye opener, not for us. And so the tables turn when you think about it as an investor. Is your pipeline's just full of what goes into CRM is people that are likely to transact. No one else is in there because if they're in the CRM and they're likely to transact,
Yep.
it's just quicker to get the paperwork out. But hope's not in there. Like what's traditional, like phase one, discovery, and it's like, no. Like, have you spoken to them, and do you really understand what they're trying to do as a business and what they're going to do with our services?
Yep.
And that flips it. And so what we've become is the people we're the people that companies want to buy from. And so we become a broker as well. It's like, hey, I know you don't do this, but do you know a guy?
Yep.
Can we go through you? Why? Because you understand where the business is going.
Yep.
And we can't, for example, we can't get capital because our banker won't see what you see, which is the adoption of a good sales methodology, the adoption of a good website, and a digital strategy will grow our business. So can you operate and so on? And I think, again, that goes all the way back to, our time at Salesforce and really understanding that I might not have been across every single deal, but the ones that I was on were potent, high value, and were clients for life. And then when I transitioned to Domo, and I had the fortune of aligning with an account manager with the same philosophy, we were left to our own. We didn't have a thick, pipeline of 6 phases. They weren't bluebirds. Deals would just appear.
Yep. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I learned in sort of, the 15 years I've been in sort of CRM and associated sort of technologies, after selling CRM, I sold professional service automation, which is effectively for services companies, a CRM process, because services businesses have a different problem than a product business has, even an intangible product business like a software company. Services companies have the issue of, I've got to hire people, or I'm going to have, even if I've got resources that are on retainer or on contract, right? I only use them when I spend them. If I've got you in my book and you're sitting there doing nothing, then typically you're a cost to the business, and that's a problem. But I also, I've got someone on the bench is the term they use. Then I also have the other problem, the other side, which is if I sell more projects than I have capacity for, I do 2 things. I disappoint my customer, which is awful. And then even worse, I burn my people because someone can do 60 hours in a week. They can maybe do 60 hours for a month. What they can't do is typically 60 hours year in, year out, forever. Maybe you've got, someone will go, oh, I do it all the time. There are individuals who choose to do that. If you're building an organization and a business, if that's the expectation, it breaks, right? So you can't run over percentage for a long period of time either. So they've got this other problem, which is similar to what you're kind of talking about, which is how do I kind of balance the scales? As I grow, I've got the right number of people, but I haven't got them sitting on the bench too long, because if they're on the bench too long, it costs me money. So behind this is a skill that I've learned to spend a lot of time thinking about. And good salespeople, I think, no matter what CRM they're using, and whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, a piece of paper, a Google Sheet, doesn't matter. They put a plan on a page, and they put a plan, and the plan on the page might be kind of what you're describing, a singular plan for a singular contact. Hey, you're coming to us asking for capital because you want to be able to dig more holes because, I don't know, you put power poles in, whatever it is you do, right? And you want to be able to double the number of holes you can dig, and if you had a better digger, phenomenal, amazing. Okay, talk me through the details of that plan. Talk me through the customers that support the revenue stream that makes that happen. And you're kind of, and translating what your role is in that is, hey, here's the plan of what we're going to do here. And everyone gets together, understands, and, pulls the eyes out, here's the problems, here's the issues, here's where it doesn't align. You're selling this product, Adam. It's not what we want to do. We actually don't want someone to come into our business. We just want cash. And you can go, actually, that's not us. Like all those things kind of align. But I think, when you're looking at like sales systems, there's no one sales system that fits every company. You've got to fit the solution and the model to what you're going to do as a business. And sometimes you're an AE, and the global, like the holistic system for your business doesn't actually fit how you work. But that's okay. But understand, just have a system. Don't do nothing.
I was a serial offender in not updating sales systems, serial offender. But I got away with it because I was selling.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, where are you guys putting,
Yeah.
where are you putting your value here? And then it's because of the dyslexia. I don't want to sit there all day,
Yeah.
you know, and go, well, this is why the deal is like, no, it just sort of happens. And it was naivety came across as arrogance, and that it worked. The way that like what we get involved with now is so multifaceted. So we've got a customer at the moment who and we're in. Look, I won't go into details because it's a private company.
Yeah.
But it's a consumer app.
Yep.
I swore I'd never go into apps because the moment you say venture capital and investment, everyone with an app comes across.
Yep.
I've got an app that gives, it's a personality test for pets or whatever else, and you're like, nah, it's not for me. I don't understand it. But then this one app comes across our table, and I've looked at it and gone, shit, it's good because I'm using it. It's like, wow, this is amazing. So in order for me to invest, I don't need to understand about that business. I need to understand about the consumer.
Yeah.
So we imagine a lens. So we imagine like a literal camera zoom lens, and we constantly go through it as a team and say, right, zoom in, zoom out, double click, right click, or I'm a Mac guy, so it's pinch and expand or whatever. So zooming out is the most overlooked tool in B2B SaaS sales.
Yep.
Like get over yourself, get over your contacts role, and zoom right out.
Yep.
And have a look at the company. Now, if the business is B2B, understand their consumer.
Yeah.
Like understand we're software that sells to construction. Okay, well, you don't need to understand software, you need to understand construction. And once you understand construction, you go, all right, we can improve your solution so that you're better over here, so that you can do payroll at 3 o'clock, get to the TAB instead of do payroll at 5 o'clock and miss out on happy hour. Like understanding the consumer is everything. And it might not be valuable in the immediate transaction, but you start to inherit the accent of your customer instead of the accent of the company that you're representing. Yeah. So we zoom in and zoom out, and then you zoom right in and go, does the zoomed in micro lens affect the macro out here and customer? And if they don't work, you might get a sale, but you're not going to get a renewal, and you're not going to get a long-term relationship. And that's how we have to think now. And so we could start a coffee business again from scratch, no problem. And if anyone wants to get into it, it's drug dealing legally because everyone needs it. And it's highly competitive. And but then you need to understand your consumer. And it looks like we started the business, as an e-commerce business and so on, and we were successful because Yanni and myself might be charismatic and we know coffee and we advertise correctly. But the truth of it was, when we launched the product, our own opinions of coffee, when we tasted it, we were sat with the roaster and we were drinking it, we thought it was fantastic. But to the common denominator, people were like, oh, this is too sweet. This tastes like berries. This doesn't, like, it's nice, but it doesn't taste like coffee. And then the light bulb moment that we had was we need to make coffee that tastes like coffee. Yeah. Silly as that sounds, because believe it or not, in Australia, we call ourselves the coffee aficionados. Instant coffee is the biggest consumed coffee in the country.
In the world,
in
the world?
No, in our country.
Really?
Yeah, we drink Blend 43 and International Roast more than any other form of coffee. It doesn't even come close. Could be wrong,
My father-in-law is still a massive Blend 43 guy, mate. It frustrates me when he comes over and I've got this, super expensive coffee machine. He goes, just get me some hot water and a spoon. I'm good.
Are you a 2-scooper? Are you a 1-scooper?
But it is part of, I'm like, that's the critical part of like being a salesperson, like understanding your customer. Just because you've got and this is where I think so many startups fail, right? They've got the best idea known to man, except no one wants to buy it. So, people talk about product market fit, right? And you've got this concept of, okay, well, can you adjust your product to actually suit what your market wants, or how much can you push the market to change their expectations of what's possible and come to what you're building? I mean, there are so many, like, that's disruption, but there are a lot. I mean, chicken shops make money. It's been a long time since somebody's reinvented chicken shops. They're on a rotisserie, they turn around, they heat, they cook, you eat, you sell them. And look, I can put some extra basting on and I can make my shop look a bit nice. It's still a rotisserie chicken, right? They make money. That's okay. And that's perfectly fine. So if you're a salesperson, if you're standing behind the counter at a chicken shop, and some of our listeners might go, hey, how's this relate to me? Your point before, if you're sitting inside the machine, inside a software company, inside a telco, inside a car yard, hey, it's similar to being in a chicken shop. Like, that model of sale is systematic, but sometimes you've got to go there and say, and Tesla's a good example in the car industry, right? We don't want you to own the car. We want you to subscribe to the car. Okay. We don't want you to have a petrol car. We want you to charge the thing. In fact, we want you to buy solar panels and never pay for input. That's disrupting and changing a marketplace. And it doesn't mean your disruption, because you think it's a good idea, is going to make sense.
You got to prepare your customer for what's about to happen. And there's an opportunity in there. We certainly look at that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear. When you're investing, there's fear too, and there's risk is constantly on the table. And I don't come from an investment background, but I'm not a financier. I don't have a banking background, but I know that I can put a dollar value against actual value. And if you can increase it and you can put moats around it, and there's things you can do to reduce anything happening or diminishing value, then you make money. And again, it's almost like forcing myself to be financially dyslexic, forcing myself to be naive, and the idiot in the room has led me to making much better decisions instead of getting too technical. Because and you're right, that's why I prefer to help people buy rather than sell, because I can't tap the card for my customer. And the responsibility is on them. And once you put the responsibility on them, and you manage your sales pipeline in a way, I've got people with paperwork, then I'm reminding them of value and the time-bound value that's getting away from us, and an excited team that's ready to work with them. They come in thick and fast. And like, we're in a scenario where we've turned away 2 clients the last 2-3 weeks because we're at capacity. And we're spread across software, B2B software, actual physical consumer goods. This one here is a venue application, so again, consumer goods. And we're now in final stages of looking at a medical company for a complete acquisition. This will be our first acquisition, and it has consumers. So just like I've had a sales career that's chopped around, the only thing that's consistent is yourself and the methodologies that you use to go through it. And I think you grab a lot of those as you go through different organizations and so on. But I think it comes down to this: it's the type of people I just want as clients and who I want to work with. That leads my decision. If you're a dick, it's harder to sell, and it's harder to work with you. And I can be, authentic enough with you to say, people think I'm a dick and don't want to do business with me, and that's completely fine. There's approaches that I have which are very, and I think it takes a little while to get over being managed, to then have no one managing you. And then you just loose, you're loose, and then you realize the value of HR and solicitors and all these things. You're like, you just can't say that anymore, and sort of coming down from that as well. But I think it's about, be the company and be the people that companies want to buy from, and be that physical
Yep.
representation of the business and what it defines as value, and it'll come through. But you open yourself up to vulnerability, and you open yourself up to criticism and losing deals. And I've certainly pushed it too far, and I've offended clients. Yep. I've made projections that were way over or way under. But I've also been the person that telling me and fixing the mistakes never been mortal wounds. It's all just part of it. And, I just think Simon would say the same thing. And even with our investments, we work with 10%, 20% of our overall investments. And best book we now tell everyone to read, but I certainly read every single year, is Richard Koch's book, the 80-20 principle, and Pareto's law. But read the book because it is so true. So 80% of our revenue is from 20% of our clients. It is 80% of our pipeline is going to go 20%. So we don't think about volumes and volumes of activity. We think about potency. You just have to be potent. And then that comes down to being pretty strong-willed in myself and understanding that. And Simon was pivotal in that. It's, even as an AE, I know my strengths as an AE, but I know my weaknesses. And it's getting your team and your management to go, hey, these are my weaknesses, like admin, awful admin, awful farmer, better hunter. Like understanding all those things to then just say, can you, like an athlete, like I'm a striker, can you help me with the rest of the game? And we do that with our team members now. So we sort of, there's 4 of us sort of sit at the helm, and we all know each other's weaknesses like you wouldn't believe, but we talk about our potency. We go, right now, we need you here because you're potent at this. And that potency, that 20% of what their day-to-day is, delivers 80% of our results. And so constantly critically thinking about what's working. And then in another book, which was pivotal, and I got to become very good friends, and he's a mentor, the book Does It Work by Shane Atchison, who's a storied CEO of we know Shane Atchison, and he spent time as the CMO at Domo. Extremely giving man, but his book Does It Work. And then I think it's John Doerr, his book. He's the father of OKRs, but measuring what matters. And if you can keep running those frameworks, then you find that sometimes people buy in spite of you, and that happens a lot. And I've said, like, we want to work with you. We think what you do is incredible, but we want you to do it in silence and in the background. And so we'll translate. And then some of our companies will like, we want you to come in and take board seats, and we want your culture and cologne all over this thing.
Mate, look, that's been a phenomenal conversation. I mean, I think that normally we ask people to kind of wrap it up and give a couple of suggestions. You've done it without the prompting, mate. So I think those 3 books are key. We'll actually put a link in the description for those books, because I think that's things that people should learn and develop on is awesome. But mate, thank you so much for your time. But mate, thanks so much for joining the podcast. For all of our listeners, hey, if you're watching us on YouTube, please click down below, like and subscribe, drop us a comment if you can. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, give us 5 stars, drop a comment, share some pieces about the podcast. Look, we do appreciate everyone who comes and listens to us each week or so when we pop episodes out. Got some more awesome episodes coming up, but thanks so much for your time, Adam, and thanks for listening.
Bartels, good to see you, brother.
Thanks, mate.
All right, mate. Cheers.